So Anand, what a life you've had.
Life is fun. Life is fun. I mean, obviously it has ups and downs and stressful moments, but life, you got to focus on the fun and go for it.
Yeah, we are definitely going to get to those stressful moments because I am living for those stories. But before we get there,
Oh no.
You started out in hard rock. What drove you to hard rock?
Oh, I'm a rocker at heart. I grew up, I'm going to date myself too. I grew up, in the 80s and 90s. So I went to high school in the 90s. So I was a young kid in the 80s. And so all my favorite bands were obviously Motley Crue and Poison. And, you don't realize till you get a little older that, all your idols were trans chicks on motorcycles, right? With switchblades, and you're like, wow, check that out. Right. But I love that stuff. I just grew up on that stuff and I always played it. And, the more testosterone I got, the older I got, the heavier it got. And I just love that scene. I love it. I still do.
Yeah. And they're still touring.
Hey, they wear more makeup than I do.
No. They don't have drag rot, though. Stop. Wow. And then you decided you were going to switch to something you kind of created on your own, the Latindian style.
Latindian style was almost a bit of an accident. I was trying to just play Latin music.
Wow.
And, because, I'm an Indian American guy and I grew up on hard rock. And although Latin music and Bollywood music is pretty similar, if you could lay them on top of each other, my style of me just trying to play, salsa and bachata kind of sounded a little Indian to the Latin scene somehow. Wow. And I'm like, all right, well, if that's the case, let's throw some Indian instruments in there and go for it, right? And it Latindian-ized very, very effortlessly, actually. It just kind of flows that way.
That's quite a transformation from going from a hard rock, punk rock kind of scene to Latin. I mean, there's a definite, I'm not going to say not a wall, but there's a definite difference between both genres.
Oh, hugely so. Even in terms of the scene. I mean, it's almost night and day. I mean, to be honest, I was getting a little older. Couldn't pull off hard rock like I could when I was younger. And at the same time, I was trying to impress this Latino woman.
Oh no!
And
the truth comes out.
Right? I'm like, this is how to do it. I'm going to sing romantic Spanish songs. So, lo and behold, it actually worked better for me professionally than it did. But the great thing about the Latin scene is there is not that age wall that other genres have, and I did try to go a little pop in an EDM route a little bit because, hard rock doesn't really pay the bills, to be honest with you, right? You could be huge and it's grocery money. And, but, there's kind of an age cap, right? You hit a certain age and you're just too old for the business. Now, I mean, not in the case of hard rock, because obviously, Motley Crue is still rocking hard, but
yeah.
In a more pop type setting, there definitely is. And the Latin music scene does not have that. I mean, Ricky Martin, save for his recent scandal that hasn't destroyed him yet, but Ricky Martin is, he was a hero of mine since Menudo, right? I always thought he was the coolest guy ever, right? And so he was, and when I was making that switch, he was probably, he's at least middle-aged by then and was still doing really well in the Latin scene. Like there was just no ageism on the Latin scene, which I really like.
Yeah. And, to even chart how successful it became and, to take a little bit of a left turn here, this show is very, very much about diversity and inclusion and giving people a platform that don't generally have a platform. And you being the first Indian American to walk the red carpet at the Latin Grammys, I mean, that's pretty groundbreaking.